So as Venerable Tarpa set the tone, I think, as we began this series of Bodhisattva Breakfast Corners on the topic of fortitude or non-fortitude, maybe is where she started. I've been working on fortitude too. And many people out in the world are still talking about how to practice in the post-election time. And now we're in the post-election time where it's like looking at this is what it might look like time. And I was really sad to hear people here have reported, and also to see that even families are thinking about not doing Thanksgiving because there's so much upset about people's inability to talk to each other. It's just like, this is heartbreaking. And so, as I was preparing this talk, this morning, the newsletter from the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition zoomed into my email box with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's advice to the American people, which Venerable Sepala had shared earlier. He said this: I want to suggest that you make prayers of loving kindness, compassion, that you make prayers that loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta be generated in the heart of Mr. Trump, all the government people, and everybody else in the country, and even in the hearts of people in other countries. And that way, everybody in the United States and in the world can enjoy perfect peace and happiness. Pray also, he said, to pacify war, famine, disease, economic problems, and the dangers of fire, wind, water, earthquakes, and tsunamis in the United States and the whole world. May these things never happen, and may there be perfect peace and happiness in the United States and the rest of the world. And then he goes on and says, prayer has the power, since everything is created by the mind, everything comes from the mind. And so prayer has power. So this quote from, of course, this wonderful Lama really underscored what I've been thinking and was wanting to talk about today, is that to turn our minds now to really rest in the Buddha's most fundamental teaching, that everything arises due to causes and conditions. So as we reflect deeply on the truth of dependent arising, then that can help us turn our minds to helping others. We're a part of the conditionality of every moment. What we think, say, do contributes to the conditions. And so as practitioners, as we work with our own minds, we can also really have a much broader view of how we can affect the environment as well. Even the people we're having Thanksgiving dinner with, okay? So Venerable, His Holiness the Dalai Lama's book on how to be compassionate is a wonderful guide. And I was reading this the other morning, and he said, truly altruistic people have concern for limitless numbers of sentient beings without any consideration of friend or foe, nationality or ethnic group, political party or ideology. And this compassion extends to each and every type of suffering. He said, when you consider the vast scope of this task, you might become discouraged and shrink from it. Ha ha. But he said, other concern puts your own situation in perspective. Now this is the one that made me stop and go, oh, wow. At one point, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, I was particularly saddened about the situation of Tibet. But then I remembered that I had taken vows to be altruistic. And indeed, every day I had frequently reflected on this prayer. As long as space endures, as long as living beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world. The prayer does not say, as long as my party wins, as long as I get what I want, until then may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world. It does not say that. He says, as soon as I remembered this, the feeling of a heavy burden fell away, much like heavy clothes being lifted off. So the antidote to our confusion is our altruism. And also, so I've been pulling lots and lots of quotes. That's what I've been relying on. So also, if you're struggling or wondering how to speak to people, Shantideva's Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life has a whole chapter on working with things that we don't want to meet with. And I marked many, many, many verses to share, but I'm only going to talk about the bottom line of one. It's a very famous verse. If there is a remedy, then what is the use of frustration? If there is no remedy, then what is the use of frustration? The Padmakara translation group has it a little bit different translation. If there's a remedy when trouble strikes, what reason is there for dejection? And if there is no help for it, what use is there in being glum? In other words, if I can do something about it, then there's no need to fret, there's no need to add to the rhetoric in the airwaves and in cyberspace. Just do it. And if there's nothing to be done, then there's also no need to add to the rhetoric. There's nothing to be done. And we can analyze the situation here. Are there things that we can change? Yes. Are there things we cannot change? Yes. So it's useful, I think, to spend a little time thinking about, all right, what are the things about this situation that are upsetting me? What can I not change at all? This is just how it is. And then, among the things that are upsetting me, what are the things that I can do that can contribute? And there are lots. Right off the bat, we can take Zopa Rinpoche's advice and start and make our prayers really dedicated, really clear for love, compassion, wisdom to arise in the hearts of all kinds of people. I can work to keep a happy mind myself. I can reach out, offer kindness and open-heartedness to the people around me, even the people who I think I might disagree with ideologically. We might actually have the same desires, the same wishes, different ideas about how to get there, but we can learn something from each other. We can be intentional about how we condition our environment. So that's the thing that I most want to emphasize today, is in some ways it's so subtle. Well, what I think, does it matter? What I say, does it really matter? What I do, does it really matter? I'm a person who has a very deep, afflicted response, sort of a auto response to difficulty, which is, oh, what's the use? I go there first. Then I think about it. And then I come out of it, fortunately. But oh, what's the use is a pretty common major affliction. It has actually, I think, it's one of the sub-categories under closed-mindedness or something like that. It's definitely afflicted mind. It's useless. It's a protection. It's that numbing thing that happens when you're not really happy with what came about, or you're really, really grief actually is sometimes categorized in that way. It's a numbing out. What's the use anyway? But then when our mind and heart starts to kick in, well, there's a lot of use. It's never is giving up the answer to anything. Letting go is different than giving up. Letting go is very different from giving up. So we can release our attachment to things, because why are we suffering? We're attached, mostly. Or we're angry. Why are we angry? Because we were attached. So to be very intentional about our body, speech, and mind, and how we affect that environment, those are things we can do as soon as the fog lifts and we go, oh, now what can I do? That's what I can do. And analyze what is effective and what's beneficial. So I want to end with another quote. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who worked for many, 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 many years in apartheid South Africa to overcome that condition. He said, remember, you are not alone. And you do not need to finish the work. It's not all in your hands. We are growing. We are becoming the people we want to be. It helps no one if you sacrifice your joy because others are suffering. We must be filled with joy so that others recognize that caring, that helping and being generous are not a burden, they are a joy. Give the world your love, your service, your healing, but you can also give your joy. This too is a great gift. So as the Thanksgiving season approaches, may we contribute to the conditions of our environment by offering our love, our compassion, our wisdom, and even our joy for the benefit of every single solitary one of those sentient beings for as long as space endures. And as long as they remain, may we abide to dispel the misery of the world.